I'm out here today fishing with Oliver Anthony, rich man north of Richmond. Nah, I'm just kidding. I got Jessie O'Neal out here today. He's caught some good fish. He puts on catfish tournaments. He's a good dude. He's fishing with me today. I'm gonna let him tell you a little bit about his story about catching that 109-pound catfish. Jessie O'Neal.
What's up? What's up? Yeah. I've been kayak fishing for a long time. I love it. And getting out here on a boat, this is pretty exciting. I don't get to out on boats very often. If I do, they're always somebody else's. So. But yeah, that 109 was my new PB. I caught it this year in January. I do a lot of wintertime fishing, and some of my biggest fish come off of those winter breaks in that colder front water. I think before February this year, I had put 3 over 50 pounds. And I just so happened to be fishing a flood stage part of the river. I got anchored up behind a big shoal and had marked a lot of fish in this washout. There was a ton of fish in there. I hit some small blues right off the gun, and then I hadn't been fishing for maybe an hour and 9 minutes when I hit that 109 pound. It's crazy how it happened. I just sitting there, anchored up using perch fillets, little tiny perch fillets. I wasn't even using big bait. I was just using little tiny perch fillets. And that fish hit when I was sitting there tapping the side of the boat trying to get something to fire up. And I was on TikTok live when I caught him, which was hilarious because everybody in there was like freaking out about this fish. They knew it was big because I usually don't overreact when it comes to fish unless it's like something over 40 or 50 pounds. But everybody on live was watching that fish and they're like, oh, I can't see it. It's lagging, it's lagging, it's lagging. They're like, oh, your video's lagging. How big is the fish? How big is the fish? And I was like, I don't know. I got him up to the side of the boat. I think I yelled out like 50 pounds at one point, and I yelled out 60. And when he come up to the edge of the boat and went back and doubled down, boy, I knew he was over 100 then. That's my second fish over 100 pounds that I've got. When he doubled back down, I knew he was over 100, well over 100. And I was anchored up on the kayak, so I had no choice but to fight this fish on anchor on the kayak. So I got him up to the side of the boat. It took me forever to get a pair of fish grips in him because I had no net, no gloves, wasn't prepared to catch a fish like this. And so I got him up to the edge of the boat, kind of worked him up easy, got the fish grips on him, and it took me 3 tries to physically get that fish slid into the kayak. I mean, I had to put my legs underneath of him and cradle him into my lap and slide him into the boat. And then it was a whirlwind of emotions. There was some panic. There was excitement, a lot of excitement. But, my next step was where do I go? What do I do? Like, once the reality of how big this fish was, when he took up my whole deck space on my kayak sideways and was still hanging in the water, there was a lot of mindset of what to do. Do I try to just hold this fish up for live feed? Do I take him to the bank? So I broke anchor, shot to the bank as quick as I could. The live feed was lagging in and out like crazy. I got him up to the bank and got some measurements of him. It had a pretty solid girth, but the fish overall was 55 3/4 inch long. So it was one of the longest fish I've ever caught. I mean, it was something else. I wasn't expecting that day in a cold day in January. I promise you that. We had a few different measurements that gave us the weight. I had a 100-pound scale with me, but when I went to pick the fish up with the scale, it broke the scale. So all I could do was do the measurement math, and the measurement math come out to where we had a few different measurements. One was 111.6, which I felt was pretty accurate. And then the other measurements I got was over 118. I kind of just decided to split it for negative reaction, whatever you want to call it, the less amount of drama line. I always called the fish 109 to 110. I mean, I know in my heart that fish was over 112 pounds. 109 still sounds pretty good on paper, right?
Yeah, you ain't got to say where you caught it exactly, but what river was you in and kind of the area?
It was part of the Catawba River. on the South Carolina side.
Any particular rig you was using?
Just my normal, the same basic setup I got out here today, except for the big perch one. But just a Demon Dragon float on a probably 2-foot leader line to keep that bait suspended in the current, and then I was running a 3-way bump and swivel instead of a line slide, just to keep the bait tight on the bottom while it was floating. Just I think that fish was actually caught on an 8/0 nocturnal eclipse circle hook. I've been fishing for nocturnal for about 3 years now. I put a lot of faith in their hooks, and to catch 100+ pound fish on an 8/0 circle hook, I mean, that right there just tells you about performance. But I mean, it wasn't a whole lot to it. I won't mention the rods. I no longer work with that company, so I won't bring that up. But I put a lot of faith in my setup on my kayak too. I fish for about every product that I put on my kayak for the most part. The Stealth rod holders, they're a composite rod holder for kayaks, and they're pretty stout when it comes to these big blues. I never thought that I'd be running composite or plastic style rod holders, but working with Stealth is great. They're great small business out of Georgia. They really care about their product, really care about their customers, and they have a sure grip, so they lock your rods in so they don't come out. But yeah, I mean, it was a pretty basic setup, man, just like a Santee style setup, just right place, right time, I guess, when they were feeding. See, it was all white perch that day. Everything big that hit, even the flatheads that hit in January, was all caught on cut white perch.
What kind of rods you using today, Jesse?
Drift King tackle. Brett owns it, the guy out of down there by Lake Murray. He's a South Carolina guy. He does a lot of catfishing too. He's had these rods out for a couple years, but he's really started branding them within the last year. He has a little bit of everything, man. His Drift King tackles are kind of a one-stop shop. He's got reels, he's got the rods, he's got new colors coming out in the spring. He's got striper rods coming out, because he's a big striper fisherman too, on top of catfish. So he makes rods that he likes. And like I said, he's got reels, hooks, floats. He's gonna have some line coming out. Like I said, he's kind of trying to get himself into a one-stop shop. But that's the reels I'm using today. I wish I would have had him for that big fish. That would have been a great market for him. But fortunately, I was fishing with another company then, and I no longer am affiliated with them. Nothing bad, just we, gentlemen parted ways.
Well, Jesse, if you got any advice for anybody wanting to get out here and try to catch some big catfish on what to do or what not to do, just sum it up kind of short, give them a little bit of advice, kind of what not to do and what to do. And
yeah, I mean, my big thing is, you'll hear me say it a lot, is time on the water. Put your time in, learn the areas you want to fish, and the more time you put in the water, the more time you experiment with bait presentation, you experiment with hook setups, rigging setups, the more success you're going to have over time. It doesn't have to be the fanciest, flashiest bells and every bell and whistle on the end of your line. You can keep it simple and catch fish. One of my most successful rigs is a free line rig, which I might end up tying one of them on the day depending on how the bite goes. But just put time in, put the time on the water, learn the areas that you like to fish, either if it's daytime or nighttime. It doesn't take but a few seconds and a couple text messages to figure out a body of water. Google's a good one.
What would you say hook size? Because there's a lot of talk about it. I personally have had luck with 8s, but I think 8s can't get past the bone plate on certain bigger fish. I've been going to a 10, now I'm to a 12, and I caught probably a pound channel cat on that 12. So I know it'll still catch a fish smaller. What's your take on the size of a hook? I mean, could it cost you?
I mean, as a tournament guy, the size of the hook depends on the fish that I'm trying to target. If I notice that I'm out there fishing and I'm running 10 and 12-aught hooks and I'm getting a lot of short bites, I'll change it back up and go back to an 8.
Right.
There's a lot of times I run the 8s and just make sure that I'm, you know, matching that up with a piece of bait that fits that hook. I'm not going to run, you know, half a perch, you know, 10, 12 inches on an 8/0 hook. I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm just saying I'm not going to.
Yeah, it's not smart.
But I mean, depending on what kind of fish you're after, match that with your hook sizes. You know, find wide gaps. Like I use a lot of the time, and the hooks I'm using today are the Eclipse circle hooks by Nocturnal. They're real wide offset hook. They do really good. Even the 8/0s do really good for big fish, just because of the offset. As soon as that fish puts pressure and turns on that that hook rolls, and they're sharp. And
that was what you was using when you caught that last big one?
Yeah. I'll tell you what, a lot of my tournament fish are caught off of 8/0 hooks. And then once I start getting into bigger fish, or I start calling fish out, then I start running big hooks like the double setup I have today.
Now what about that big fish? It was on an
8/0 hook.
Wow.
8/0 hooks. That's what I'm saying. As long as you trust the product you're buying and do your research into that product. I mean, I've caught my first 100-pound fish was on a some cheap circle hook I found at Walmart, I think. I couldn't even tell you the name of the hook no more. Now I'd buy 8s and 10s and run them, but yeah, that 109-pound fish was caught on an 8/0 hook. I caught an 86 a couple months ago on an 8/0 hook, and I mean, I think it's just about matching that bait with the hook to where the fish gets a good quality hook set on itself. You know,
that makes sense. I've got a littler piece of bait on that big 12, but in my mind, you know, when you hook up with a fish, you can't even turn, and you feel him swimming with it, and then all of a sudden he's there no more, and you got slime up your line.
That would come off.
It just kind of makes me think, you know, how did I miss that? You know, how did I miss that? I mean, maybe my hook's too small. So that's where I got to, but
and with that too, it could be a lot of different things. Like this past weekend, I had a lot of missed hook opportunities that cost me an event, and it could be a few different things. You could have smaller fish hitting your rods throughout the day while you're dragging. You could have a small fish hit it, and it'll turn that bait around, and it could possibly hook itself. I've had that happen more than once. The big fish right there. This back rod just got tapped too.
I appreciate you sharing that with the viewers. We're going to get back to fishing. We're going to see if we can't put something in the boat for you today. Y'all stick with us. Stay tuned.